as First Nations people, we always had very viable, sustainable economy base, always. As a matter of fact, you do know why Ottawa, this city is called, you do know why Ottawa is called Ottawa. You do know what Ottawa means, right? Odawa. Odawa. And you know what that word means? Odawa. It means to trade. So we as Anishinaabe people, our economy was always based on trading, right? It was always based on trading. We didn't have like the coin there, or the, what you call the $10. Well, I was going to say Queen Elizabeth, but I guess, anyhow. Well, she was still on the money, the paper. We didn't have the paper money or the coin, but we had other forms of valuables, right? An example I will give you is we traded even our crop with one another. We traded our meat with one another. We as Algonquin people are nomadic people. We're hunters and gatherers. And so we know that our relatives, the Hongwe or the Haudenosaunee, the Mohawk people, they were farmers. So when we came together, we traded. They traded their goods, we traded our goods. We traded canoes. And then I know the Plains people that had horses, they traded their horses. But it was all about trading goods that were, and they were valuable. So we had our economy base, and there was no poverty. That's the other thing. There was no poverty in our ways at all. Poverty was introduced because of capitalism as well, right? Absolutely. So see, and we took care of one. That is why we as Anishinaabe people, the Algonquins, we are called Omama-winini. Omama-winini. We were together. We were cohesive, collective societies. We took care of one another. No one went hungry. If a family was struggling, we helped. I remember even the day that the Indian agent was there and the priest and all that, and we weren't allowed to do A, B, C, and D. We still took care of one another. We still helped one another and we shared. We still did that. And now, unfortunately, it's not like that anymore. But economy is important because I'm sure that many of you in this circle have heard our First Nations people, our leadership saying that we want to be part and parcel to Canada's economy because we have contributed royally to Canada's economy, the land and the natural resources. We want to build viable economic or capital. We want sustainable gains as well. And there's nothing wrong with economy, not at all. But we need to be part of that, absolutely. And then we have our people in our communities that are entrepreneurs, that are masterminded with economy and their solutions and how to build those viable economic structures. I think about the Cree and James Bay, for example. I think about the Whitecap Dakota Nation. That's another example. I think about Membertou First Nation. I think about Millbrook. I think about, you have to have vision. And when you have vision, well, leadership has to have vision. And then your community has to believe in it because your leadership has to. But again, it goes back to saying, all right, guys, let's use Telfer as an example. You're all about management and economy, all right? Bring in our people in our communities that are masters in economy and learn from us and how we share that. And let's work together. Let's work together to build those viable economic bases for our people. Because we don't want to be in poverty all our lives. We don't want to be like always having to depend on the government, to beg the government for the pennies that they owe us. You know, and because we were always self-sufficient, self-reliant, independent people. And very unfortunately, that was taken from us. But it is a time now that we are reclaiming that. And today is the opportune time because Canada is on the journey of, what's the friggin' reconciliation? What's the buzzword? What's the buzzword? But I don't call it reconciliation. I never liked that word. Because all that is just a warm, fuzzy, feel-good word. And then the government gets their little brownie point. Yeah, man, you know, reconciliation year, you know, we said, we gave a land acknowledgement. Oh, I love your people, you know. Okay, another gold star, yay. But if they're true to their word of healing and building relationships, then it's got to be ReconciliACTION. So I turn that word around, ReconciliACTION. Because you can say all the nice words you want, but if there's no action, then nothing will ever change, right? Nothing at all. Actions speak louder than words. How you be good allies is you work with our people. Work with us. You know, it's not about coming in there and saying, okay, I'm going to tell you what's needed, or I'm going to tell you how to do this. No, it's about you saying, okay, we want to make a change. I want to learn. I want to be a great scholar, and I want to work with Indigenous people. So can you tell me how I can do this? And you see how you're forming that relationship, and you're changing, and it's building trust. That's so important. Is you have to build trust, absolutely. And you know what I would suggest is that amongst your own peers, what you do is do a self-evaluation of your own programs. That's so important, self-evaluation, absolutely. And we should all go through self-evaluation. I know I do every now and then, but so you know, do that self-reflection, and then start evaluating, and then look at the programs that are in existence with respect to look at your programs that are in existence, and how many of these programs have involved Indigenous peoples, and which kind of Indigenous peoples, because we're not all the same, right? There's First Nations, there's Inuit, and there's Métis. Do not lump us together. Please do not do that. You got to move away from that pan-Aboriginal approach or that pan-Indigenous approach. Move away from it. And besides that, that's not even our terminology anyhow. We went from being, well, I won't use the word that they call us back then, the S word. But we went from being Native to Aboriginal to now Indigenous. What's going to be the policy change next year? What the hell are they going to call us, right? So I'm not Indigenous. I despise that word. I despise Aboriginal. Ugh. I don't mind being called an Indian. There's the Indian Act. It's not called the Indigenous Act, right? It's not called the Aboriginal Act. Because I think back about what my grandfather said, and I'll explain that after. But I know who I am as an Anishinaabe First Nation. But, so, you know, do that assessment. Like, okay, so how many Indigenous peoples have we included here or involved? And amongst this category of Indigenous, how many First Nations, how many Inuit, how many Métis, and where are they located, and why did we include them? Start with that. And what was the results of this? Were the results positive or not? And if the results were positive and there was recommendation, did we implement those recommendations? And if we didn't, why did we not? And if we did implement the recommendations, how successful are they, right? So start with that, and then that's how you know, you what's it called, SWOT, like the strengths, the weaknesses, and the challenges, and whatever, the changes. And then you focus on, and then you say, okay, we know, and then you, as a scholar, you're being very, mindful, as students saying, well, this is not working, and I, as a scholar, I want to make this change. And how can I make this change? Well, first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to reach out to First Nations people. And then what you do afterwards is you work with your system, you work with your administration, but you have to, if you're a collective, then you know what they say, there's strength in numbers. And if your administration or management wants to make that change, then they'll support it, absolutely. But do not let anyone take away that idea that you have, or that action that you want to do, or anyone to tell you you cannot do it, because you can do it. You simply can. But it's working with communities, and you work with Indigenous scholars. That's so important. And we're all around. There's so many Indigenous. You got Justice Murray Sinclair, right? You have John Burroughs, right? Then you have You have so many of them, and Mark Dockstader. There's plentiful of our own that are scholars. Yes, and then work side by side with them. And just imagine the great change that could be made, right? And I said it before, and I will say it again, that every faculty in any post-secondary institution has to have mandatory cultural awareness training. That is so important, absolutely. Because then you deal with it, so you prevent that, right? It's important. But I know, but on the other side of that, there are those of us that don't mind not doing the work, put it that way, because we have our own responsibilities, but at least we can direct you to where you should go. But don't depend on us. And the same thing happens when there's issues of racism. And there is racism, you can't deny that. Well, they turn to us and we're the objects of the racism. We're the ones that are suffering the racism. But then they turn to us and say, how are you going to deal with this? We didn't create this racism, so don't ask us to clean up your friggin' bloody mess. Right? Unbelievable. Or else we'll put you on an advisory panel so that you could deal with racism. I don't want to be on your advisory panel for racism. Oh my God. Okay, can you implement this now? Like, oh my God, it's you people that are doing this now. So you see? Anyhow, but there's still changes that need to be made. But the more that people speak up, in particular, we'll say scholars, then the more that somebody's got to listen and got to be making those change. Because what I say is resistance.
Yes.
Resistance.
Yes.
At the moment. And no, I'm resisting. I am not dealing with your racism. You got to take ownership of your racism. You got to make that resistance, right? So important. One person can't change the system, but all it takes is one person to make an idea. But together, again, strengthen numbers. Unity. Anne-Marie earlier said that you are a community of scholars. So when you take the word community, you're coming together in that unity, that collective. So collectively, then you can change the system. You can't save the world, that's for sure. You cannot save the world. And I remember starting law school, and many of the students said, in particular, okay, I'll use the word Aboriginal students said, oh, I'm here, I'm studying law, I'm going to save the world. No, you're not. You can't save the world. You can't even save your community. No. Yeah, you have to take what's in the front of you and learn it so that can become your tool afterwards to make the change. That's so important, right? And there are times when, yes, and when we're in those systems, you're battling, you're like, oh my God, I'm not part of this system, but I got to be part of it now for this purpose. And then, okay, I'm just going to learn it, and I'm going to gain what I need to get out of this system, but then I can go into another system where effectively my knowledge, my skills, my experience could come to help to make change. Now you're put into that this new system, and now you want to make change, but you can't because you have all these oppositions in the front of you. And the oppositions is because it's people's mentality that do not want to change. I hear it from government when they're always saying like, well, we want to make change, but we can't. Why? Because the policy says so. Who the hell made the policy? The human being made the policy. So if people make policy, you can damn well change the policy, right? So, but for me, I think it's just an excuse so to continue doing what they want to continue doing. Sometimes people are afraid of change. And then there are times you feel very alone. And then there are times you feel like I am the object of criticism here. And those, no pun intended, arrows are going to be shot at you, right? And I can tell you as a professor, there are times that I've stood in the classroom and I was subjected to the worst racism from white students. It was, and you're standing there alone, you have no shield, you're standing there alone. And then there's a moment that goes through a second that goes through your mind that, am I going to be okay when I leave these doors here? Because who's going to be waiting for me outside the classroom or when I'm walking to my car, right? And there's times that I've been told by students, white students, you are not qualified enough to teach me because you're an Indian. The only reason why you are here is because of affirmative action or equity. So I say to them, and I remember this clearly. It was the winter of 2010, and my first class, orientation of students, and so three students started questioning me, and then I realized, like, whoa, you're questioning my freaking skills and abilities here, right? And so basically they told me, we don't believe you're qualified enough. And I said, okay, let me get this straight. So the three of you think I'm dumb. So I'm not qualified enough to teach you because I'm an Indian, so therefore you think I'm dumb. Yep. Well, I said, you're dumber for freaking registering for my class and being in this course. Right? Hello? The sequel to Dumb and Dumber. But so basically I said to them, free will, ladies. You can march right out of here and you can drop this course. Well, we're going to put in a complaint against you. I said, go right ahead. And they did. And that's the other thing. We're not protected. So when we're the object of racism, we're the criminal. There's no protection for us. But when we stand up to fight for our rights and defend ourselves, we are the racists. Then we are told lateral violence. Or then we're being investigated, and then we're faced with judge and jury, and we're the bad ones. But you see the evil of racism here? You see this, right? But how do you make that change? Don't give up. Don't give up. Because if you do, then you empower them. Don't give up. Because you are the one that has been entrusted with this responsibility to educate, and you are respected for that. And you will have supporters with you. And amongst your own colleagues of scholars, share your lived experiences, and share your knowledge, and share your ideas. And you know what? You're not alone. Because I can guarantee you will go to others, and they'll feel the same thing, but people are shy, or they don't want to burden anyone with their experience, right? And then you're even going to have allies even amongst the non-colored or Canadian, or you know what I mean? You're going to have that, sister. So don't give up. Please don't. Because let no one silence your voice. That is so important, okay? I love you for your courage and your strength. When I mean my contact history, is I'm sharing all the teachings of my people. And then we are an oral history people. And so all this knowledge of ours, this history, has been passed down from one generation to generation to generation. And in our Anishinaabe way, and I'm going to give an example of my experience, of the Algonquin people, that in our societies or in our communities, that there was always, in a family, there was always one that was always destined to be the one that was going to carry the oral history. So your relatives, your grandparents, or your great-grandparents, they were the ones that took you sat with them, and they passed down everything of their family and the nation. It was passed on to them, then they're passing it on, and that's what my grandfather William did for me, and my other grandfather, my both grandparents, my both grandfathers, my maternal grandfather and my paternal grandfather were very influential. My maternal grandfather taught me all this pre-contact knowledge of our spirituality and our medicines. And then my grandfather William taught me that pre-contact knowledge of our political structures, our history, and our governance. And they said, in time you'll know why you need to know this. But for my family, my children, I did that with one of my children. Now I'm doing it with my grandchildren, and I knew which one of my grandchildren would be that spokesperson, would be that knowledge keeper, that historian for our family, and that's my grandson Ryder. Because you just know. Now, then we have those historians for our nation, and those individuals. So we have our family, we'll call them historians, and then we have our nation, our community, and our nation historians, because it's all that oral history that's passed on. And now we're recording that oral history. So when we say pre-contact, that means that we had our ways of knowing our being and our life and all our structures in place long before there was contact made with the Europeans, at whatever moment that the Europeans made contact with our people. For some it was 1492, and then for others it was like, 1534, and then for others like 1608, and then you got 1763, and then you got 1867, you got blah, 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 and all that. So that's what I mean. But when we're talking about pre-contact, very important, yes, because most people say, well, how the hell do you know? Are you just fabricating it? No, I said, we're not Donald Trump and doing fake news there, okay? It's oral history that's been passed on from one generation to another, to another, to another, to another, and that's so important. And I'm so thankful, and I am so grateful, and I am so thankful that my grandparents put that responsibility onto me and taught me that. And it's all that, and not just the knowledge of our families, but also of other families and what happened to us. And we have places that we call those historical sites or sacred sites that we can go to, and then immediately you start reciting what happened here, way, maybe even 1,000 years ago, and so on, because it's all that knowledge. And now what the scientists or the archaeologists or the anthropologists are saying, like, oh, okay, they can come to confirm that. And we're saying, but we don't need your confirmation because we've always known it, right? But it's good that they can confirm it, because then we tell the world, here it is. We didn't cross the Bering Strait. But you bring in, the community, like the elders, you find out who's the knowledge keepers in the community, who are those historians, and they will come in and share that. And then they could be from very old to even young, because we have our apprenticeships. So I'm mentoring my grandson. So even at that, and we always have to be there. I remember my grandfather always bringing me places with him. And I could remember the first time when I was about 5 years old, and he would, I remember waking up that one morning and there was all these strange people in our house. At night, the night before, we said goodnight to our family members, like our parents and our grandparents, and I'm very fortunate to have grown up in a home where you had your parents, your grandparents, and your great-grandparents. And then you wake up in the morning with all these strange people. But my grandfather, because he was the chief at the time, and our people had to come in underground in the middle of the night because we were not allowed to assemble, because the Indian Act did not allow us. So people had to sneak in. And he gathered all different leaders from various tribes, and to talk about our common issues of losing our land, of losing our freedoms, and then, for us to resist and then to be resilient and to fight for our rights and our survival. And I remember that first time, when he said, Das namadibin, kongego kitigen pizendam. And what he said was, come and sit here. Don't say anything, just listen. And I did. And I could still see all those people sitting there. And many have passed out of all those leaders and those elders. There's only one today that's still alive, and that's Orion Lyons. But I'm thankful for that, because he said to me, you're not, and he mentored me for many, many years. And he said, you won't understand why I'm doing this, but in time, when you become a grandmother and a mother, and I was about 3 and 5, 6 years old, like you don't see yourself as a mother and a grandmother, right? But as I got older, like now, when I became a grandmother, that is when I truly understood why my grandfather and what he did, and I appreciate that. And I truly understood when my grandfather said, you are going to go to law school, and you will teach them. You will teach them. How? And then in 1999, I became a professor. And then I said, I shall teach them. But my students teach me too as well. North American Indian tribes from all across North America. It was so beautiful, it was powerful. He brought in the prophet keepers, the spiritual people, the politicians. But we heard many prophecies. And they said the prophecy when the condor and the eagle will meet. I'm the eagle, North America. She's the condor, South America. And we're connected. Isn't that beautiful? Isn't that beautiful? And you are all part of the prophecy. You are all part, no matter where you come from, you are all in our medicine wheel. All of you. You've all seen a medicine wheel? That medicine represents all peoples of different colors. And what does this represent? Life. Creation and life. And we are all related two ways. We may be different, and let us be different, and let us celebrate those differences. And we all have our gifts to share. But we are all related. Doesn't matter our color, doesn't matter where we come from. We are all related in two ways. One, there's only one Mother Earth for all people. The second, we are all related in the human family. Until we meet again, take good care, and I love each and every one of you. Thank you. Miigwech.
Thank you.